work, you know. Just work to solve the poverty problem. Yes. When you work, you get what you
now
deserve.
joining me is independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, a guy familiar with fighting back. Of course, he led a huge filibuster talking about the same issues I've been talking about here. Senator Sanders, how do we do this on a national scale? Because to me, it seems like this is it. If you lose in Wisconsin, you're going to lose in Ohio, you're going to lose in Indiana, and the dominoes are going to fall, and then the Democrats are going to wake up and go, oh, my God, how did we lose our whole support?
Well, Cenk, you're absolutely right. What we have to understand is this is not just Wisconsin. This is part of a concerted attack on the middle class and working families of this country by the very wealthiest people in America, the Koch brothers and many others. And you're also right in suggesting that if you look at the end game, what are you talking about? You're talking about the end of Social Security, privatization of Social Security, massive cuts or the privatization of Medicare, major cuts in Medicaid. You're talking about, over a period of time, the end of unemployment compensation, the end of the minimum wage or lowering the minimum wage. What these guys want is to return us to the 1920s, when working people had virtually no rights to organize or to earn a decent living. Bottom line today is the top 1% earn more income than the bottom 50%. Top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. That gap between the very rich and everybody else is growing wider. And what the wealthiest people in the country are doing are using their resources to make the attack against the middle class even stronger. They want the destruction of the middle class and almost all wealth in this country to go to the people on top.
You know,
And more bad news for unions. First, the UAW got run out of a Volkswagen plant in Tennessee. That was last week, and that was humiliating. And now, arrested. 10 union members arrested in Pennsylvania, chalking up a laundry list of charges, including arson, violent crime, and conspiracy. Reporter Jillian K. Meltier is investigating this for the National Review. She joins us. Nice to have you back, Jillian.
Hey, thank you for having me.
All right, so what's going on with this union in Philly?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. So I've been following it for about a year. And it's not just this union. For about 4 decades, the construction trades have dominated, the unions have dominated the construction sector in Philadelphia. They've used intimidation, violence, vandalism, harassment to basically force contractors and builders into hiring their workers. And I think what you see here is a couple members of the Ironworkers Union got caught for it. And the federal government's actually prosecuting them as a criminal syndicate.
How did they get caught? What were the facts underlying what they got caught doing?
Well, there are a lot of signs. I think maybe the one that tipped it was there was an act of vandalism just days before Christmas in 2012, where basically allegedly union workers went out to a Quaker meeting house that was under construction. They'd gone with an open shop contractor, and allegedly they used basically a blowtorch to target several of the pressure points of this building, caused more than $500,000 worth of damage. And I think that really upset people because, you know, it's the Quakers. Who messes with the Quakers?
Indeed. All right. Now, is this union members or is this the union?
Well, they're investigating the union as a whole. And that's actually something fairly interesting because there was a 1973 Supreme Court ruling, Edmunds, and it said that basically unions can't be investigated or prosecuted if they're carrying out quote-unquote legitimate union business. What's so interesting about this is they're investigating the union as a criminal syndicate as a whole. And that really sets kind of a fresh precedent. I mean, that's pretty rare for them to be able to do it.
We're supposed to mean.
Did he really know how to run things?
Oh, he's smart. There's no question.
John Gotti was now the CEO of a giant crime corporation with more than 2,000 members and associates and millions in illicit revenues. The captains, Gravano says, passed on up to 80% of their take to the boss.
We had 21 captains, the Gunzlier, made members,
and how did it work?
associates.
Each of them gave him something, right?
Well, each person gives to their direct superior, their boss.
So you were giving him like $100,000 a month.
I think it's more closer to $2 million a year. But, yeah, anywhere from $1.2 million to $2 million a year, something like that.
And how far did your tentacles reach in the businesses of the city?
Everything. You name it, we did it. wherever we can put a situation together that inflates the price and we can have a skim from that.
The mob was that powerful in New York that it controlled everything from what you eat to where you live to what you wear.
Absolutely.
To how you travel in the city. Everything had a tax on it from the mob.
Just about everything I could possibly think of.
It was, Gravano says, a complex interaction of legitimate businesses like concrete and construction and criminal methods. Sometimes they just make sure their guys got the bid. Sometimes they got kickbacks from other people's work. They did it, he says, by controlling many of the labor unions, from the garment industry to garbage hauling.
You're talking a lot of money. You're talking a lot of industry. I mean, they take over an industry, they put their people in business, and free enterprise goes out the window.
And that's a great question. And this is what I think. I think we have to take a hard look at what I would call consumerism in America, which says that the goal of life is just buying and buying and buying. I think what we need is a good friend of mine, Bill McKibben. Bill is very active at 350.org and one of the leaders in the climate change movement. He wrote a book called Deep Economy. And what his suggestion was that instead of having a society just on buying, 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 and producing, you have a society which is based on community, where people's satisfaction and joy in life is being with other people, rather than the need to purchase more and more stuff that in many cases we don't need. So I think, to answer your very, very good question, the way to go is if we provide health care to all people, which is what every other major country on earth has done. If we say that educational opportunity is available to all people, regardless of your income. If we can deal with the basic economic needs of people, we don't have to have an economy just based on growth, especially when almost all of the income associated with the growth goes to the top 1%. But, it's a fairly radical idea that you're proposing. But I think that's what we've got to be thinking about. Just in California, they have now cut water consumption by 25%.
In fact, the mandatory restrictions in California, first ever there, are in response to terrible drought conditions, but also some of the... But what you're talking about, Senator, is changing the culture of this country.
Yes, that's right. And it's
harder even than winning the presidency as an independent.
Well, that's on day two. After we win...
Pace yourself, right?
After we win and take on the billionaire class,
great.
Then we deal with it. But it is, it is a very important. Let me throw out the simplest of questions, what you're really asking: what makes human people happy? What makes us as human beings happy and content? What is a satisfied life? Now, that's a question we should be asking ourselves.
Right.
Ultimately, it's an interesting in a country like Denmark, where they provide health care to all of their people. Where they provide educational opportunity for free, strong child care, much more economic security in their public policy than we have. To the degree that you can measure it, they are a happier society than we are.
Right.
Because we have so much anxiety. We got to keep striving, and there's not that safety net that we need. So you've raised a very fundamental issue, and that will be day two of the Sanders.
But of course, Denmark, thank you very much for your question. Come on forward. But of course, Denmark is not an economic power. Denmark is not a military power. Denmark is not the leader of the free world, as America has been. That's our brand. We've embraced it. Would you be willing to trade that status to have a country that was a little bit more chill?
Well, you raised that question a little while ago when you said, yes, how do we fund, which is expensive, free tuition in public colleges and universities? It is expensive, yes. But then we have to take a hard look at other issues like military spending.
The balance might have to shift.
Exactly.
Now, this is the Nazi Party's platform. I just wanted to kind of show you a little bit of this. This is a National Socialist program from the 1930s. Actually, this is 24th of February, 1920. But this is what it eventually became under Hitler. And you can see their platform is very much like Bernie Sanders. We demand a division of profits of all heavy industries. We demand nationalization of all previous associated industries, trusts. Abolition of unearned work and labor incomes, breaking of debt, interest, slavery. Equal rights and obligations. Let's see. Oh, yeah. We demand on an expansion of a large scale of old age welfare. creation of a healthy middle class, and its conservation, immediate communalization of great warehouses, and they're being leased at low cost to small firms, the utmost consideration of small firms in contracts with the state or contrary municipality. Anyway, very similar to the socialist programs of today and the policies of people like Bernie Sanders. I used to be a Ralph Nader supporter. He's similar in some ways. He's very progressive, very liberal, very progressive liberal. Not all liberals are alike, but the progressives and such have a lot in common, and these two have a lot in common, Bernie Sanders and Ralph Nader. While they disagree on some things, very few things, in my opinion. I think Bernie Sanders has more flavor for war than Ralph Nader did. I think Bernie Sanders has a couple of other more dissatisfactory characteristics, but I can't support either one of them anymore. And a lot of it has to do with how terrible socialism has been in the past. Like I said, this is from the Nazi Party. You look at the Soviets, you look at Cuba, you look at others. Very similar in dissatisfactory policies that ruined nations and starved people to death. So, and this is why I refuse socialism. This is why in our own private life we've refused, handouts from the government and whatnot, and we qualify for it, but we've refused it. We always will, and these are the reasons why. I just wanted to sort of illustrate.
To solve the poverty problem. Yes, when you work, you get what you deserve, your due reward.
I'm not a bit surprised that the Federal Reserve got to the Senate. I had expected Bernie Sanders to offer 604, which was the same as 1207, which is the Audit the Fed bill. And at the last minute, he switched it and watered it down, and really it adds nothing. It's a possibility that it even makes the current conditions worse. This is essentially the bill plus more of the bill we beat in the House Financial Committee, the Mel Watts bill. But this is so disappointing to me that this happened, especially since for months now I've worked with Bernie on this, and he introduced the bill in our language, which was 1207. But as we speak, this is Thursday night, they are working on this on the Senate floor, and we need to get as many messages possible to any senator you can think of, especially to Bernie Sanders' office, that we don't want this version. We want a true audit of the Fed. We need to know what the Open Market Committee does, and we need to know what they're doing overseas with the agreements with central banks and financial institutions and other governments. And in this bill that is being offered, that amendment that is being offered now does not include this. So I am sure that Senator DeMint is working on this and may come up with an alternative. But the only thing that would be fair to the American people, after all this work and energy that we've put into this, is have an up and down vote on what was our 1207 in the House, which is 604 in the Senate. Yes, they may water it down and they may win it, but if they don't have an honest vote on a Senate floor, to me it would be very, very discouraging. But it also shows what kind of forces we're up against. The president doesn't want this. The leadership on Wall Street doesn't want it. The Federal Reserve doesn't want it. So they're powerful forces. But just think of the people that do want it. Everybody from progressives and liberal Democrats to libertarians and constitutionalists and the average person, so many of the Tea Party members, they all want this. They want transparency, and they want to find out what's going on at the Fed. So it's very, very important. It's a crucial time, and whether I doubt if they'll vote tonight, which is Thursday, but they may vote tomorrow. Who knows? They may vote Monday. But it's vital and urgent that we do as much as we can to bombard the Senate with information that we, the people, deserve to have an up and down vote on Audit the Fed bill.